Welcome to the Third Realm Integration Podcast, where our unconscious minds meet and the transformation begins. I am your host, Maegan Kenny, licensed psychotherapist, soul retrieval shamanic healer, and heart conscious practitioner. Let's get started. All right. What is going on, everybody? It's another episode of the Third Realm Integration Podcast. I am Maegan, and it is nice to be here with everybody today. How's the week going? How's the rest of the week gonna go? That's a good question. It's Thursday. Hope you guys have had a great start to the week and are now wrapping things up, but really stepping into your full power today to make that happen. And then getting ready for the transition into the weekend. My weekend starts on Fridays, hoping yours does too. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I feel like my whole week is a weekend, I gotta be honest. I really only keep like maybe 2 days out of the week that are very structured and very filled, like back-to-back stuff. The rest of the week, though, it's like, permanent vacay is what I'm going for. I think the whole 4-day work week is definitely something that should be considered by big companies. And I think mental health and wellness and having a less stressful life and creating that by what you take on, including at your job, should be a primary focus for a system like we have here in the United States. I think we're kind of moving in that direction, but it's freaking slow. I mean, during the lockdowns and everything going virtual, people got a taste for what could be accomplished virtually. How costs and overhead can be cut, how the workday can be condensed and be more productive if there's more focus on actually getting the work done. I mean, think about how many times you work at a job and you go into an office and literally most of the day is spent going out to lunch and kibitzing with coworkers. I mean, who's actually getting any work done like in the office space? I mean, don't employers know that literally people do about 4 hours worth of work in an 8-hour day, but you're paying them for 8 hours? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it just makes sense for the employee to only work the amount of time during the day that's necessary to get the work done. And if they want to work more and get more work done and get a full 8-hour day and get paid for that, they should have that option. I feel like the whole educational system and the whole work structure in this country needs a huge overhaul, major, and just refocused. Have the priorities get reestablished and redistribute the resources. I mean, it could be working so much more efficiently. But anyway, so my point is like, if you can create a life where every day feels like a vacation because you've been able to shed all of the unnecessary things that maybe you once made a part of your life in your everyday schedule, and you've now trimmed, you've now cleansed your routine and your daily responsibilities, and you've condensed them, you've shortened them up so you can really focus. You're not moving in a million different directions. You're using your energy in a much more conscious way, recognizing that as human beings, we do not have limitless energy. You have to prioritize. There are only so many slices in the pie of our auric field. You have to choose where you are going to consciously put your energy and what you're going to dedicate it to. And you got to scale it back. if you want to do it good, if you want to provide or produce or generate quality in your life. Quality, not quantity. You know what I'm saying? All right, well, today, here's the deal. I would like to talk about something that I learned from my teacher that has carried me forward in my understanding of human development and healing. And I think it's taking a very deep concept and really simplifying it, but I don't think oversimplifying it. In all seriousness, I think reducing this concept down to what I call our primary wounding patterns makes all of this stuff really easy to understand. Now, from how I've been taught and how I've been able to confirm this, both in my own personal experience and in my clinical work. I wouldn't even call it clinical work at this point, though. Clinician is not the title I'm trying to attach myself to, simply because it doesn't reflect who I am. I'm a healer. And yes, I'm a therapist, but I'm not a clinical therapist, even though I have the capacity to think in that way and do that kind of work. That kind of work burns me right up. It's too draining because there's too much internal resistance there with the model itself of how the clinical world conceptualizes human development and human function and healing. So I wouldn't even say from a clinical perspective. I would just say from an informed perspective that every human being, in a Jungian perspective really, but in the Jung space, this isn't really spoken about. This is more a theory that my teacher developed, and I've tested it in every way, shape, or form, and it always comes back solid. That as human beings, we carry two primary wounding patterns. And this is not necessarily, from the metaphysical perspective, this is not caused by our life experiences and our childhood. Our soul jumps into the body that we have chosen that harbors these wounding patterns to different degrees, and then we choose how our life is going to play these wounds out in real life, in the play of consciousness. So it's not what happens to us. The things that happen to us are the things that we have chosen to happen to us. It started long before that. And so the two primary wounding patterns that we all carry as human beings from an unconscious perspective, so unconscious primary wounding patterns are these. One lives in the masculine category, and that has to do with power and control dynamics. Fears around being powerless and out of control. Masculine category. That's the masculine expression of the wound when it plays out through power and control dynamics. The other wound is the feminine wound, which is all about value and self-worth. And I would even argue belonging and connection. Because the feminine wound of fearing not having any value, or seeing yourself as not having any value, and having low self-worth, feeling like you are not good enough, that wound, actually, if you go back to Winnicott and maybe Melanie Klein. I think Melanie Klein was object relations theory and Winnicott was the good enough mother. So there is this, and this is kind of Freudian at this point because it's pretty like original psychodynamic theory. But the good enough mother is when the infant is learning how to negotiate the relationship with the nurturing mother. And the example that's typically given to showcase this is the experience with the baby being breastfed or just fed, not necessarily. Back in the day, they would just call it breastfeeding, but that's not the choice for everybody or the option for everybody. So just the baby being fed by the mother is a great example of how the infant starts to develop this good enough mother projection, even as an infant. Because the mother is seen as good enough when she is to provide the food and not good enough when she's not. And as soon as that comes into the focus of the infant's experience, that the mother can't always be reliable to give me food at every second that I request it, now the infant has to take on the experience of essentially being disappointed by the mother because of the idealistic infantile expectations that the baby has of the mother being entirely perfect. That you are to service every need of mine and never falter. And there's no capacity, of course, for an infant or a child or even an adolescent consciousness to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and take perspective and understand that the other person is just a person and a human being at the end of the day and is not perfect and can never be perfect. And if we have that expectation of somebody, then that is a projection. It's kind of like how I talked about how clients will project the mother onto the therapist. If the therapist is a couple minutes late, it's like, oh, you're not good enough. I got to quit therapy. How dare you? This is an example of an expression of the infantile projection of the good enough mother. And then what it comes down to is the mother really, at the end of the day, just has to be good enough for that baby to be able to develop in a healthy way. Not perfect, just good enough. And it seems like we also live in a society now where like that isn't good enough. Like the good enough mother is just not good enough. And so everyone's got like, mother trauma because their mother like wasn't whatever. And it's just interesting how certain generations tend to respond to the good enough mother archetype in different ways. Some are more resilient than others, and some can have an entire lifetime of mental health challenges that they attribute to not having enough emotional attunement by the mother. Because maybe she struggled with her own depression, her own anxiety, her own fears and wounds or addiction or whatever. And that is the understanding today for how trauma can develop. That simply just having a neglectful or depressed mother can set the course for all sorts of attachment issues, abandonment fears, all kinds of stuff. And that's not how it's always been. So it is interesting how different generations kind of manifest different wounds. And I tend to think about it from a more cosmic perspective. Like what planets was this generation born under that they are carrying with them at the DNA level. But these two wounds, the wound of being or fearing or feeling powerless and out of control, and then feeling not good enough and unworthy, those are the two primary wounds that are operating within us at all times. And then sometimes, depending on how they're getting expressed and what experience and relationship they're getting expressed through, one can be primary over the other. And it can oscillate. There have been notable times in my life, in my healing journey, where I'm able to identify that this particular wound needs the most attention right now. And then I work on that wound, and then I see that all of the experiences that I'm having that are causing me to have an emotional reaction are actually rooted in the other wound. And then I spend time working on that wound. And then when I do those deep dives, then things start to kind of level out. And then it's just kind of like an average, typical way in which each wound is kind of showing up in smaller ways. But there are some times when like your life experience is showing you over and over and over and over, and the universe is just kind of like beating you up, man. Like you're in the ring with Rocky Balboa, like for real. And it's like, oh my God, I keep drawing in the same person over and over and over and over and over again. Keep drawing in this same experience. Well, that's because the pattern is still at play. You haven't integrated the lesson yet, and so it's still going to play out until you do. And I find that the feminine wound in particular has so much to do with attachment, rejection, and abandonment that we will manifest those experiences if we're carrying that wound. a lot of times for a lot of people. If there's a fear of abandonment, you will, I don't know, maybe even push people away with your behavior and your neediness and your dependency and your emotional volatility and your rage and your addiction and your chaos and your intensity. And then before you know it, you're feeling abandoned and rejected because people are leaving you. And it's like, yeah, they actually are leaving you. And it's in part because it's maybe tough to be your friend. Frankly, maybe it's a lot of work. It's too much work for a lot of people to be your friend or your whatever partner. You could be literally pushing people away through that. You could also just be manifesting that fear out where every little thing does feel like a wounding kind of rejection, which always comes back to not being good enough. So not being accepted by the collective, not being good enough to be accepted by the collective. That's how I see that tie in. So the not being good enough has to do with our sense of belonging to the collective and how we are received by other people. And when we have really a great difficulty with this wound and it's just left wide open and it's just dragging us around everywhere and it's creating our reality, we're always feeling like somehow it's bad that we are not accepted by the group or by the person, whatever. Instead of coming to a place where you recognize that there is something about you that people are reacting to, and that might be the reason why you're not being accepted or included or liked the way that you want to be, but that's not a bad thing. It's like a big fish trying to fit into a small pond. It's like maybe you're bigger than the collective you're trying to fit yourself into. Maybe your level of consciousness and maybe your vibration is higher, and so it's not a match. But some wounded part of your ego, i.e. your need to be accepted, to feel good enough, that is making you want to be accepted by this one person or this one group. Instead of being like, actually, the reason why I'm not being accepted is because I'm fucking badass. Like, that's the reason why. But not letting that blow up the ego. And then you actually respond with the more fragile ego, which is like, yeah, screw everybody. I'm better than everybody. No, it's like just on an energy level. It's just not a match. And there's some reason as to why you're trying so hard to be accepted. It's kind of like how I had reshared a post on Instagram a few weeks back around like really letting go, especially in a patriarchal structure. Women are taught to not put their needs first, and because that's a bad thing, and that you are to be selfless, and therefore selfless means you put everybody else before you. And how dare you take care of yourself and prioritize the quality of your own experience and therefore your own needs before anybody else. And how dare you choose for yourself, especially if it upsets anybody else. So this like attachment to being liked. Whoa, is that toxic? Holy toxic. The addiction to being liked. Oh my God. Wouldn't you rather be authentic than liked? Isn't it more important to be genuine and authentic to who you really are? And follow your gut and take care of yourself? Isn't that more important than being liked? Because when we strive to be liked and we make that the priority, what we're doing is we're putting our allegiance to the group above our individual needs. And if we lived in a collectivistic culture and we didn't have an individual experience, but rather only experienced ourselves in relationship to the group, and we lived in that kind of culture, then that might be different because the whole system would support that. The Western system in America does not support that. So we can't take that approach and then think that it's going to fit. We don't have that kind of structure. We don't have that kind of system. We do have an individualistic society. And in order to integrate yourself into the society, you kind of have to accept that and know how to navigate that. You kind of can't have it both ways. You can't have like some people doing it like this, some people doing it like that, and then have there be no tension. Like, women are supposed to be of the collective mindset where I wouldn't even say women have been conditioned to have a collective mindset. It's not a collective mindset. It's I don't matter and you matter more than me. So I'm going to put your needs first and then I'm going to lose myself in the process. Whether that's in a relationship with your kids, with how you perform your job at work, trying to please your boss. It's the people pleaser that is it was so deeply rooted in the feminine wound of not being good enough and not having any value. It's like, can you see yourself as having value separate from what you can do for other people? That's a big one to decondition ourselves from, because that one has been here for a long time. Especially if you're a woman. Are you kidding me? It's literally been conditioned into your DNA by your society, your culture, probably your upbringing. And it's like, I don't know, it's really time. And I'm starting to see it in a major way. It's time for the strong feminine to start stepping forward. We need strong feminine leaders on the public stage. We're in dire, great need of that right now. And that means women that are not angry, that are not anxious, but that are well integrated with their masculine and their feminine energy. It's in union. One isn't really prioritized over the other. They're neutral. There's a neutrality there. They're fully integrated. And I think if we can find our way through that, as women, we will completely change the game. I mean, you're kind of seeing it now already with the number of single women that are out there. I mean, literally, my whole neighborhood is single women. It's crazy. All women that have, like, divorced, left their previous lives, and moved here to start a new one solo. It's crazy. I'm one of them. I'm in the right crew over here, let me tell you. We get everybody thinking the same way, and I'm jiving with it. Everybody's sharing, not the same way, we don't all think the same way, of course, but nor would I want that. But that particular way in which we see the world and then have structured our life and acted in reaction to that, in relation to that, that's pretty badass. I mean, I know women that have divorced their husbands who are like 75 and like not in great health. And it's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm totally done. I am not going to live a life in which I am miserable anymore. I'm putting myself first and I'm not happy. So I'm out of here. It's like, damn right. And that doesn't mean we then hate the masculine. Sorry, ladies. The masculine has a role to play, but it's not the one we thought. And we have the power to reshape the roles right now. And I think it's a very powerful place to be. And I did an episode a long time ago on the last pod about the difference between masculine and feminine thought, just from an energetic perspective. And I would be interested to maybe do an episode on this show around the changing of the gender roles in 2023 and how it's playing out. And how women work best as leaders and how men work best as leaders. And just in my own personal experience and how I've seen that. Yeah, there's the tide is turning. And so I think if women can begin to stop making apologies for putting themselves first, come from a place of kindness and compassion and unconditional love, which is that I'm going to have an open heart to really listen to myself and listen to you. But I'm not going to have the desire or the urge or the drive, the energetic charge to change how you feel. If you have a reaction to the fact that I'm taking space for myself and I am not going to put you first, I'm going to put me first, I'm just going to hold the space for that and not try to change that or fix that for you, but allow you to have your experience. That's what our contract was. Our souls signed up for some learning lesson here. And like the way that I have approached that in my personal life is I don't respond to text messages or return phone calls until I feel like I have the energy to do that. I do respond to emails, and I am connected to my email all day because that doesn't drain any energy from me. But phone calls, I'm such a millennial. I don't do voicemails and I don't do phone calls. I barely do texts because I find text messages to be incredibly intrusive and incredibly draining. And people need to start kind of waking up to the fact that having access to each other all day, every day, with this impulsive press of a button, it means you're like in on mode all day. And every time you get a hit on that text and every time you respond, you're using up a lot of that energy that is inside of you that could be used for something else. So I have renegotiated the unconscious contract with everybody that I know, which is that if you text me, you're probably not going to get a response for at least a few days, if maybe a week, Like, I don't do texts. And a voicemail, well, I don't even think I have my personal voicemail set up. And even on my work line, it like explicitly says, like, please email me. Like, you can leave a message, but if you want a faster response, please email me. Because it's just, I can retain a lot more of my focus and my energy when I communicate in ways that work for me. So I have to ask myself, when somebody calls me, if I'm busy and I'm in the middle of doing stuff, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to return that phone call until I've done what I need to do for that day. And that might go on for several days. I might not be in a place where I have the free time to now take on other things for like 3-4 days, maybe a week. And so I communicate a lot more with my behavior than I do with my words. I used to think that I had to say everything in order to be heard and to set boundaries. And I've now learned that communication can happen in a variety of different ways, and it's most strongly communicated through your actions. It's kind of like they say, like, a sorry without changed behavior is just manipulation. Words really don't mean a whole lot. And the more I do the work that I do, the more I'm watching people's patterning play out through their behavior. I don't really listen to words anymore. Words, you can get easily manipulated through words. Don't watch their mouth, watch their feet. How are they moving? If they say they're sorry, are they acting like they're sorry? If they said blah, 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 are they acting that way? And same goes for us when we're setting boundaries. If we say, I don't take calls past 5 p.m., are you acting that way? Are you backing that up? Or are you like taking the call at like 6, 7 o'clock at night on a Friday? Or responding to text messages at 6, 7 o'clock at night? When you've said, like, are you going against your own rules? Like, you got to be willing to set the boundary and then follow through with it. It's not just about saying it, because then it's just an empty threat. And then the energy you're bringing is not stable. It's not confident. It's not assertive and authoritative. It's weak. And so if you just say something that you want somebody to do or that you want to happen, but you don't follow it up with action and energy, the other person's unconscious mind is going to see right through that and going to know that you're not serious. So you got to follow through. Think about when you're training your dog. If you give a command and then you don't actually follow through with it, the dog's not going to learn. It's kind of like it just goes right back down to basic behavioral conditioning. I remember in my behavioral class that I took several years ago, the professor talking about how you make a behavior strong. Here's how you make a behavior strong. He gave an example of a baby in the shopping cart, in line, checking out at the grocery store. And the baby is going, not like baby, but like a toddler, little kid, wants a candy bar. And the parent is like, nope, you can't have the candy bar. We have candy at home and you can have it after you have dinner. And the kid starts freaking out, flipping out, screaming, crying. Nope. And the parents trying to hold out. They're trying to hold out. Their freaking nervous system is getting revved up because this kid is screaming and crying. There's a natural physiological response that healthy, non-sociopathic, non-psychopathic people will have in their body when they hear a child cry. And it does spike the anxiety. It can spike the blood pressure, it can spike the heart rate. And then on top of it, I'm sure the parent is getting a little embarrassed at that point. And there's nothing they can do, even if their typical response is to take the kid, remove the kid, and bring the kid outside, which I would say is probably a good idea. You're in line, you can't do it. So now you're like, oh my God, I gotta hold out. The kid's just ramping up. The screaming starts. Bloody murder. You like that Boston accent? I do still have it. I used to really allow myself to go total Boston. Not my jam anymore. But when you say bloody murder, I mean, come on, you got to say it like bloody murder, you know? So the kid's screaming. And the parent is like, I'm not going to do it. And then finally the parent's like, I can't take it. Give him the candy bar. But after like 5 minutes of saying no, okay, that is the best way to reinforce a behavior and guarantee that it's going to happen again. The worst thing to do is to hold out for as long as you can and then give in. You are actually better off giving the kid the candy bar the second they ask for it, or holding it out entirely no matter how painful it is and never giving in, no matter how loud the screams get. But to do it in the middle, where you've held out, and then you give it, no. It's a guarantee it's happening again. So you got to make a choice. I'm either gonna not have the rule and not try to reinforce it, or I'm gonna have the rule and make myself reinforce it. So the middle ground is where you get into trouble. And so don't do that with yourself. Don't reinforce bad behavior and breed bad behavior in yourself. If you know what the right answer is, you got to stick to it, no matter what. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and you are going to figure out how to do it along the way, because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn, and then you're going to be like, oh, that didn't feel good. I tried it this way. It didn't feel good. Tried it that way. It didn't feel good. So now I'm done. Now I'm really just doing it like this because there is no other option, because I've tried every other route and I don't feel any better. So this is it. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. So I'd rather feel uncomfortable doing it like this. Whatever the behavior is, choosing the path. And I think setting boundaries in today's day and age is so freaking essential. Man, oh man. Shutting down my social media pages, even shutting down the last podcast, and redefining how I'm using my platforms and coming with a different kind of energy. And then totally removing myself from the cell phone. I don't even like using the cell phone to speak with people. I only use the cell phone to manage my business through apps that I use, and check my email, and organize my files where I send messages to myself, and I keep things going, and listen to my stuff on YouTube. If I'm on my phone and I'm doing all those things and I get a phone or a text come in, I gotta be honest with you. I'm like, ugh, really? Can't you guys see I'm in the middle of something? Like, I'm on my phone. And then, people will know I'm on my phone because I'm posting on social media or whatever, and then I'll get, a million phone calls, and it's like, no! Who told you I was available? I'm in the middle of something. Gonna call you back. Might be a few days. Might be never. But no, I know it's not right now. So it's about redefining all of these rules, right? Our core beliefs. Challenging our core beliefs. If we have a core belief that says, if we don't call that person back or answer this phone right now or do for them what they want us to do for them right now, we're a bad person. They're not going to like us, and we're going to lose them as a friend. Well, it's like, well, if you lose them as a friend, they weren't your friend in the first place because they're using you. I've had this experience several times. And you also have to ask yourself, okay, so then why did you draw those people in? What are they there to teach you that you yearn to be taught because you signed a contract with them to show up in your life? And also, if they're using you, how are you using them? That's totally Jungian. Whatever you're getting faced with, you're also doing in some way, shape, or form. And frankly, every relationship is a give and take. Everybody's essentially using each other for something. Even if it's like, oh, I love being around that person because they make me feel so much better. You're using that person to feel better a lot of times. I'll call this person because every time I talk to her, I feel so much better. And somehow they're using you. The other person is either getting their ego fed by you needing them, or there's some like conscious contract around a give and take. Like, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. One of the things that I definitely want to spend some more time focusing on in my own life is when people ask me to help them, not expecting anything in return. Like, that's a tough one. Because it's like, if someone reaches out to me because they're in need of something, and I'm like, yeah, no problem, I can help you. I have that information, and I point them in the right direction. In the moment, I'm not expecting anything in return. I just have the information and I want to share it. But if later down the road I have a need and I need help with something and I reach out to that person and I'm like, oh, hey, would you mind doing this for me? And it's like of an equivalent ask as what they asked me, like, at some point prior to that. And they have zero interest in helping me. I'm not going to lie. It's a burn. It's a little bit of a burn, a little bit of a rub, as some people would call it. Yeah, that's a little, I have a reaction to that. And so I got to work on that. I know I got to work on that. So letting go of expectations. And if you're going to do something for somebody, do it out of pure unattachment, not because you want anything else in return. That, are you okay with doing this and not receiving anything in return? Meaning, if you ever get into a position where you could use some help, are you okay, really, frankly, doing it without anybody's help? And if you ask them for help and support on whatever it is that you're doing, are you going to be okay if they don't meet you there and help you? And if you do have a problem with it, there's probably some level of fear and desperation behind that. Of like, I can't do this on my own. I need the help. So I need you to help me. How dare you? Like, it's easy to kind of fall into that place, especially when you're building your own practice, or you're, building your career, or you're building your skills, you're in school, whatever. You're not like fully established yet in what you're doing. And I've kind of been there for the most part in a formal sense for a while. So I do think I tend to draw that kind of stuff in just because that's the energy that I'm in. That's why I'm going to be so pumped when this PhD is over. Let's wrap this thing up. We're in the home stretch. Been doing this for a while. Let's end the formal part of the training. Close the door. And keep it moving on to the next point. But anyway, I know I went off on a few different tangents here, but I really feel like it all connects. The most important thing I can encourage people to do is ask themselves, what wound is getting expressed in this experience right here, right now? Look at the emotional reactions that you're having and ask yourself, does this have to do with my fear of being powerless? Or does this have to do with my fear of not being good enough? And then go from there. Starting there, bringing those two wounds into conscious awareness, and asking yourself and getting curious about which one is at play right here, right now. I'm telling you right now, that is one of the easiest, most straightforward ways to get started on doing the deeper work on yourself and start healing some unconscious wounds that are big. Because when you start to see how many of your experiences in life are actually tied to just one of the wounds, everything starts to become so much clearer and so much simpler. And then you can formulate a recipe as to how to start increasing your sense of power and control, really power, empowerment, self-empowerment, and how to start feeling good enough, increasing your sense of value. And there are strategic ways to do this, and behavioral changes and environmental changes that can be made to support this and facilitate this. I do it every day. I teach this every single solitary day. And it's a huge, huge piece to how I see the world. And it also helps me engage people because I'm asking myself, when I'm having a reaction to a person, what wound do I think this person's in right now? Based on how they're making me feel. Boom. As soon as I tap into how I'm feeling, powerless or out of control or not good enough in relationship to that person, when I'm with that person, which one do I feel? If I'm feeling not right, boom, now I know how they're feeling, then I can have compassion for that. It's like a really strategic step-by-step. It's a technique, really. And I dig it. So I'm going to leave it there. Mission accomplished on another episode with you guys today on how to heal our primary unconscious wounding patterns from the masculine and the feminine energetic expression. All right, you guys. Until the next episode, I'll catch you on the flip side. See you around. And may the light always lead your way. Be well, everybody. The Third Realm Integration Podcast and related content is intended to provide information and/or entertainment only and is not a substitute for mental health or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Do not delay mental health or medical consultation or substitute a mental health or medical professional's opinion because of what you heard on this show. Seek the advice of your physician or another qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health or medical condition. The host of this podcast does not provide emergency support for mental health or medical issues. For questions or concerns, visit your local emergency room or contact your doctor. All right, here we go. I got a quote for today by C.G. Jung himself that relates to exactly what I've talked about today. Here we go. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.